Hi, Emily.
Hi, Samantha. So nice
I'm
to
in a new
see you.
place.
It's a beautiful place. I have been to that place and I love it there. You're also the place I'm in is sort of my inner mind. I've got my like goals, my words, my vision board. It's like Emily emanating here. So we came together today to talk about polyamory in data and technology, is how I want to intro this. Because you brought up a really interesting topic of the one to many. And since I always like to incorporate love in some way in these talks about data and technology, I just thought polyamory, that's what that one to many sounds like. But
Sharing the love.
sharing the love, but is it all love? Is there challenge? What do you want to discuss about one to many today?
Okay, I have two or three ideas about one to many, and my opinions might change as we talk through this. So this came up for me this week because I'm working on a project to implement e-signature, where we send out a thing that needs to be signed to many people, but only one of them needs to sign. And this has it turns out this has been very, very complicated to configure, and it might not be possible, which I'm always like, okay, another video on if things are possible. We'll just like put that in the bike rack. Basically, I filtered this down, and I've been knocking my brain on it, that this essentially comes down to a one-to-many problem, where e-signature platforms expect one-to-one. So everyone who gets the file is a signer, and they should sign it. So if you send it to 4 people, all 4 of them should sign it. There's also some of the platforms I researched, like people be like a viewer, which is more like in Google Docs. You can have like a viewer or an editor. But we want anyone who gets it can sign it. And as soon as one person has signed it, then the rest of them are off the hook. And it really has given me, when I've talked to the products and said, this is how we do things, then they say, why don't you just send it to the one signer who's supposed to sign it? So they're operating in a one-to-one framework, and we're operating in a one-to-many framework. And we have to figure out how to bridge that conceptual gap. And I just have this idea that one-to-many is one of the many data foundational concepts that people often need to get more comfortable with, because it's really hard at first to get that concept, because most spreadsheets you are one row all the way across. Mm-hmm. And when you're in a database mindset, there's one donation, many payments, one household, many donations, one this connected to many of that. And spreadsheets don't model that particularly well, but databases do. And so this e-signature project has kind of reopened this concept, and I wanted to talk about it with you and hear your thoughts, Emily.
Well, in the so many thoughts in the spreadsheet model I think people have seen this happen, and definitely when I talk to people, at least in the early stages of understanding Salesforce reports or any CRM reports that work in a similar way, this is the additional concept of real duplicates, like real meant duplicates, meaning that you see the same information in a couple of lines, but there is one difference because some records hold all the same info. You have your job record, you have your housing record, you have something else about you. They all have your same name attached to them. So you're going to see your name 3 times, but on different rows, housing information, job information, whatever. Yeah. And just kind of getting over that first emotional hump of it is a possible concept to see data repeated and know that the reasons why, because of a one-to-many relationship. Me as a one person, I have a relationship to these many different things. So you're going to see my name associated with these many different things.
It's kind of liberating. Like, I actually really love the one-to-many idea. But then when I'm actually looking at the data, it's such a much more complicated way of interacting with the world.
Well, that's closer to reality. I know we've talked about making our databases.
And that's when I think about a concept like single source of truth or potential source of truth. it should be close to reality. And the reality is that there's more than one person who can sign this document, but only one of them needs to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I want to think about how to keep that analogy when I've started to think about single source of origination, which is really, for me, makes a big difference to the word truth. Like origination doesn't come with that moral heaviness to it that has to get it right. But I like the one-to-many also. I mean, complexity though, the hardness of it always comes back to me to this like prime example of work history, trying to keep your donor or your constituent work history updated, which just the logistics of being in touch with a lot of people and having them update information about themselves is very difficult. But the idea that you are going to have this history and have to mark something as current or have a history of your like affiliations with different organizations and mark something as primary. That like added layer of another field or another marker to say something about a particular one in this one-to-many relationship comes up a lot.
Yeah, that's the alumni, like any organization that does alumni engagement has this problem in a serious way.
Yeah. But so, okay, we like to think about problems, being more like opportunities or not being just like it's right or wrong, right? Like seeing the gray in between. So what do you think maybe we can name something like a challenge to one-to-many and then a really big opportunity just to show these two things next to each other.
So I think a challenge is that technology doesn't yet capture the complexity of one-to-many-ness as much as we want it to. Email is a huge example of that. People have more than one email, but then your email senders, MailChimp, et cetera, they only let you have one at a time. And so you end up with either a duplicate problem or this or that. And it's the same thing with this signer problem, is that these technology platforms expect you to be having these one-to-one lines of communication, and the real world, we just have outgrown that.
I am in a very interesting similar problem in that campaigns in Salesforce only allow you to have one campaign member per the contact for that campaign.
Yeah, and they give you a really big red error.
Yes,
and which you're uploading data too, like, and even there's no way to get around it. Like even when we're uploading fake data and stuff like that, we
exactly
have that problem.
You can't. If you go to a camp, if you volunteer at an event and you donate to it, you have to put that on one record, right? You can't have a record of you as a donor and a record of you as volunteer. This is coming up for me in the integration work I'm doing, because in another system, you can have two records for this particular campaign.
Of course you can, because people are complicated.
I mean, in this sense, you can register for this event, like a campaign event, and then cancel that registration and then register again. So they keep the two records of that, but we can't show that in our Salesforce instance. Yeah. So, okay, really though, I love that challenge. The opportunity though, that those things can bring up, I'm seeing this for my integration work, the opportunity was to really think through, how do we view what data in this do we view as important? We actually don't need what this other system does to keep track of that it was canceled and then registered again. We don't need to keep track of that. And that because we had the limitation of the one-to-many or the one-to-one in this case in Salesforce, we had to really say what was most critical to us. And sometimes limitations, even though they can be challenging, can help us drill down into some insights that are better for our work.
Totally. And in this e-signature example, they asked us, like, can you just simplify this and know who the signer was? And we really thought about it, and we were like, actually, we can't. But it gave us a chance to refine our process, or to potentially refine our process, and then actually to align around our process and decide that it was the process that made sense for us.
Yeah. What the process that makes sense for us, the tech that makes sense for us. I love this. I think your example of talking with these software companies is really great example of saying we have to find the tech that works for us. And you have a use case, and your requirements, and you are able to examine them to see if they had to stay that way. And if they do, you're going to need to find the solution that works for that, not necessarily refine your requirements to work for the tech. I love that.
One to many, Emily.
I will one to many. I want to
one
to
Salesforce,
many,
many applications.
I want many dates on your calendar to do this again and in person too.
Sounds good.
All right. So, last thing I just want to say is we want one to many, actually, us to many of you, anyone listening, because we've had some really amazing people reach out to us about these conversations. And so if anyone has any thoughts, you want to be part of this, you want to send in questions, just like, please, we will.
Yeah. Or if you want to pop onto our Zoom.
Come on.
Come on.
Let's talk. All right.
One unit. We're the one, even
you're the many,
and you're the many. So come on in.
All right. Thanks so much, Samantha.
Bye.
Bye.